Hello, this is Adam Twardoch from FontLab. Today, I want to tell you a few things about FontLab 7.2.
So faster interpolation. Well, FontLab supports interpolation through the variations panel, and in FontLab 7.2, we've made interpolation 30 times faster, which allows you to work in a fully new way. So what you may have known is you can use the sliders to drag along the axis and preview the instance in the preview panel or in the text mode of the glyph window. You can also see in the preview panel, turn on preview interpolation, and that kind of plots the current glyph along two locations that you select in the variations map. And this, when you edit, you can see how the interpolation works. Of course, in this case, I've turned on power nudge, which causes the nodes in the middle to interpolate. If I bind sign bearings, meaning I turn on these two buttons, then when I modify the outline, the side bearings are actually constant. So that's handy if you're playing with different widths. But now in FontLab 7.2, well, there was a play and stop button, but that kind of worked slow. But now in 7.2, you can actually edit and see how the preview panel sort of plays along one axis and interpolates as you edit. So you get a very, very sort of interactive preview of the whole text as you make changes. And in fact, this is Science Gothic by Thomas Finney and team, and this has 36 masters and 4 axes. So it's a large project. And you can either click the play and stop on one axis or on several axes and watch the interpolation live, or even command click on any of the play buttons, and then it's playing along all the axes that you have in the font. And that still, when you, well, I'm going to pause here and play just one axis, and as I edit, the changes are reflected live. When I drag, the playing sort of pauses a little bit, but it's really very, very fast and fluid. In previous versions, it was kind of impossible to work this way. Now, when it comes to type design, there is always this question of consistency, and we've had this functionality of suggest stems for a while. I just wanted to remind you how it works, because we've added something to it. So suggest stems, well, if I draw something, just a couple of simple shapes, even in just one glyph, I can use the live measurement, the quick measurement, and see how large it is. If I go to font info and stems, click auto, I get stem entries. And now when I draw some shapes, whenever nodes are close to a stem value that is in font info, a green suggestion appears, and you can snap to them. So you can add a couple of widths and then have this sort of, you could say, dynamic grid based on the stems appear as you draw or as you edit. Now we've also extended this to support suggest distance, which, well, the stems, as you know, are either vertical or horizontal. So that's only the distances you could get suggested. But with suggest distance, it's slightly different. You can, I'm going to do add variation, so I'll just add a master and the weight axis automatically and clone the current master. Now here, what I will do is I will, well, turn on quick measurement. Okay, I see 74. I guess you don't see the number. 74 units is the stem. I go to font info, other values. There's suggest distance, X, I enter 30, Y, I enter 10. And now when I drag or selections, a sort of outer outline, outer contour at the defined distance appear to which my edit can snap. So I can very, very quickly, let's say I've said, okay, I want 30 units distance suggestion. So now I'm kind of easily adding the 30 units on either sides. And I can, of course, change the value when I want. But this lets me, it's not like automatic bold, which never really works, but it's really assisted. I can get some consistency if I need that. The same here for the O, but in this case, I'll sort of drag it inwards twice the 30 units. So in this case, it's also going to be the same distance. The same stem thickness. Now with, again, bind side bearings and power nudge is on, so I can make the O a little wider. And I have very, very quickly, changed the weight prototype, of course, because it needs more massaging. But the very, very first step, getting these values equal, is sometimes very handy. Now, variable components. So, as I said, we've made interpolation or variations much faster, and we also added, actually in a previous version, but now in 7.2, we're making it better, variable components. So let's say I have my 2, which has 3 masters, interpolable. In generate the glyphs, I can say 2 superior equals 2. So it's going to build the glyph 2 superior, and I'm going to put the component digit 2 into all the layers. So now I have 2, and I have the glyph 2 superior. But of course, I need to adjust it. So what can I do? Well, what I could do is in the Elements panel, expand the properties. Now, let's say I set a scale 60%. Now I can click on those sliders. Okay, so by default, FontLab limits the design range to where the masters are. I can go to font info, axis graph, extend the limits, and that allows me to do extrapolation. So now I can click, drag the slider, and I'm extrapolating. So I have a variable component. I will set the side bearings to equal to 2. Of course, this could be any expression or value. Drag it up. Again, I could enter this numerically. Copy the expressions, the side bearing expressions, to the other masters. So there's always 2. Now I repeat this for the other masters. So because you may want to choose different proportions, and of course, you may want to pick a different instance. Sorry, there was a little cut there, but yeah, I'm picking a slightly bolder instance every time, and the 2 superior is variable, and it's in every master, the component refers to an interpolated instance of another master. Now, when I modify this, you'll need to use font update glyphs to see the update in the component, but that's a component, so it's live, it always reflects the rest. Attached components. Now that's something that we've expanded in 7.2. We had this concept of auto layers, which allow you to build your glyph completely automatically, assemble it from components using a recipe, a sort of text, little text expression that you can enter, there's a special syntax, and whenever the underlying glyphs change or whenever you move anchors, these change. But that's, so order layers have a particular limitation, and that is that really the content is completely locked. It's always built automatically according to this recipe. And now that's easy to use when you're doing simple composite glyphs. For instance, you put a lowercase a, put an anchor, a top anchor, then you make an acute or acute comb glyph, put the underscore top anchor, and then make an order layer for a acute. FontLab puts these together, they snap to the anchors, and whenever any of the underlying glyphs change, the order layer changes as well. But there is no manual editing, and that's not practical. On the other hand, if you turn off order layer, you can move all the components freely. But with attached components, there is a middleware. So when you attach a component, then that particular component will attach in the composite glyph using the anchors, the corresponding anchors, so like top and underscore top. But the other components are still freely editable. And now it matters which component, the order of the components matters. So for instance, in this particular case, I've placed the F component, then the .i, and then the acute. Now, the .i has a top anchor, acute has underscore top, so it snaps to the top anchor of the source glyph of the .si source glyph. But if I add, sorry, I've dragged now, actually I've dragged the acute component between .si and F. So now it's F acute.si. If I add a top anchor of a F, which is easy, you hold the G key, press Shift and click. And then it adds top. Now the acute component snaps to the top anchor above, inherited from F. But again, if I move, the component moves. But if I drag the order again, if I change the component's order so that acute is after .i, it snaps to the top component inherited from the .i source glyph. And if there is no top anchor in the preceding, or the matching corresponding anchor in the preceding component, then it tries the yet preceding component and so on, and until it finds a corresponding anchor. And if it doesn't find it in the source glyph for the components, it finally checks the current glyph layer. So it will snap to a top anchor in the current glyph layer if there aren't any top anchors in any of the component sources it tries. And it even works, as in this case, it even works after you decompose some components. So FontLab will then inherit an anchor from the kind of topmost component. In this case, the top anchor was inherited from .si, and the I component still snaps, attaches to that anchor. So that's kind of the last resort. So I can edit the kind of contour portion of the glyph, and I still have a component attached to an anchor, which is something that wasn't really previously possible. And since the glyphs format also has a similar mechanism called automatic alignment, we kind of import and export, or FontLab 7.2 imported and exports these values, so attached components and the automatic alignment, kind of are similar concepts, so they convert. Right, now let's have a look at one more thing, big thing, that's the Lookups panel and functionality associated with it. Now, previously, FontLab had the feature syntax, the Adobe feature syntax, and a feature panel. Now I'm going to show you when I open a TTF that has an Arabic OpenType, TrueType flavored OpenType font that has OpenType features. In preferences, you can decide which glyph names, whether glyph names should be renamed when you open a font to one of the 4 schemes: production, friendly, alternative, or uni. Or if you turn off this, then it'll be original glyph names. So there's also a setting, what should happen when FontLab decompiles features, whether classes should go to the classes panel or should be inlined in the feature text as sort of fee classes with brackets. Now, when I open this, I here have sort of friendly names, because that's what they were in the font. And on the bottom left, you can see the features panel, which has the text representation of the feature definition. But now the new Lookups panel, which is on the bottom right, shows you a visual kind of structure of all the substitutions. You can explore them. You can sort of check visually what each feature actually does, whether all the glyphs are being substituted, or maybe some false friends or some glyphs are substituted that shouldn't be, because if you use FontLab or some other code to automatically generate features, sometimes an extra glyph may sneak in because of some glyph name suffix, but you actually don't necessarily want it there. So this is the Lookups panel in this version allows you to get like an in-depth look at what the feature structure in the font is. And here you can see that I've opened this font, and it has a class-to-class substitution. So its init and medi are replaced by init, and in the rightmost, in the sort of right area of the new Lookups panel, you can see the blue are the class-based substitutions. You can double-click and see every member of it. But FontLab also has a different way of decompiling features. In preferences, if you turn off simplify substitution rules, then rather than doing class by class and producing classes, it will just decompile by simple glyph to glyph substitutions, which may sometimes be easier. So now I've reopened the font, and now it's just a series of substitution rules that are simple glyph by glyph substitutions. Now, this version also lets you, because the Lookups panel stores the OpenType feature data in a format that is very similar to Microsoft Vault. And in fact, FontLab 7.2 lets you can export feature projects to Vault, to Microsoft Vault, edit them in Microsoft Vault, and also import from Vault. So, unfortunately, Microsoft Vault does not like hyphens in glyph names, because it's a product that, well, has been around for 20 years or so and hasn't been really updated recently. So before I export my stuff, I renamed my glyphs to production names. So they're now uni. Now I can go to File, Export Font As. I've customized the export profile to make sure that I'm using current glyph names, whatever they are. In this case, the production names, but the default TrueType export profile always renames the glyphs to production names. But in this case, well, you may want to keep your names. If you don't use hyphens, then there is no need to rename these glyphs to production names. So just use current names if you're exporting for Vault, and that's what I'm doing. And I also go to File, Export Features, and here I can choose two formats: the feature file that everybody knows, but also Vault project file. If I export it, and well, then I can go to Microsoft Vault. Microsoft Vault only works on Windows. It's a free app. The release notes for FontLab 7.2, when we'll publish the beta very, very soon, they will contain links to the app. It's an app that lets you visually edit features. And of course, the Adobe Fee format is great for substitutions, but it's not really very good for positioning. So with Microsoft Vault, you can edit positioning features, mark attachment in rich detail. So now I'm in Windows, I'm in Vault, I open the TTF I've just exported, and I import the VTP, the Vault project file. I have the features. I can edit a particular substitution. Here I'm just changing, I'm inserting a wrong glyph. It's Vault, so it doesn't have big previews, but now I'm gonna export the Vault project. Then I go back to FontLab, import features, choose the modified Vault feature definition file, and I do have that new substitution. So I can import, export, and FontLab 7.2 stores this data with the VFC or VFJ file. And now, since I'm done with Vault potentially, I can rename the glyphs back into friendly names. Now, because when you work with Vault and FontLab, you can actually create complex script fonts. And well, I thought, okay, what about if I try to use an older app of ours, Bitfonter, which lets you to create bitmap-based fonts in the photo font format, and also a bunch of older bitmap formats. What it can also do is you can open a TTF, you can create a bitmap-based project. So I'm rasterizing the font that I've just exported at 300 ppm grayscale. And well, it's there, it's got bitmap images, but what's fun is that I can set up Bitfonter to export it into photo font in such a way that Bitfonter will write a small XML file that is with the extension PHF. It's a very simple a file that it's a little bit similar to the UFO sort of header. And all the glyph data will be written as an extra PNG. All the glyphs in one huge PNG. There are limits to that, so you can, if you want higher resolution, you should use separate images, which is also possible here. Extra space, 1%. Maybe I would have, it's like padding around these images, you'll see in a moment. Maybe I could enter a bit more than 1% there. Yeah, I've chosen, I've set up the preferences for the photo font. Now I'm exporting to PHF, and that's the big image. I can open it in something like Photoshop, and well, I can do something with it. So this is just very silly. I'll just do, like an emboss filter, just to show that, it really, it's possible to be playful. Now I'm saving the PNG and opening the PHF, the photo font that links to that PNG in FontLab. And FontLab actually reads photo font files. So you can see that on the right hand in the preview panel, there are these embossed Arabic letters. I can copy the features because the photo font format doesn't know anything about the features. But since we've used the same glyph set and the same glyph naming, I can copy the features that I've just created in Volt or using Phi or whatever, and I can export the font, customize the profile, make sure that both OT-SVG and OT-SBIC are on, export the font, and then, well, one more thing, Bitfonter adds the Unicode 0001 to the not def glyph. Make sure that you remove that when you've opened PHF. That's just like an old bug in Bitfonter. So I've removed that, and I've dropped the font to Axis Praxis, the SBIC font, in fact, and I'm previewing it in Safari, and I can see that I have features for Arabic, and I have sort of a bitmap-based glyphs derived from it was actually NotoNAS, the Apache 2 license version that I've used. So, I could be playful, but of course I could create my own much more sophisticated designs, because I'm really glad that now with color, OpenType, despite the fact that there are many different flavors, there's still, there is this emergence that they're coming. We've seen, some content about it at this A-Type Pi, which I'm really glad. Now, in the last bit, I wanted to just mention something really cool, and that's Vasil Kateliev has been developing kind of a mega plugin for FontLab 6 and now 7 called TypeRig. And TypeRig consists of a couple of different modules. We're going to be publishing some tutorial videos that Vasil has produced on our YouTube channel, which you can visit when you go to fontlab.tv. But this is just a very, very brief kind of taste of TypeRig. So here, the head section of TypeRig is kind of the scope where stuff should be happening. And there are these tabs in the TypeRig panel that are really very powerful. So in this case, for instance, Vasil is choosing to align all the nodes to the right. And he's doing it in active master, but now when he turns on masters, that happens in all the masters. You can choose there's many different control operations that you can run. Node aligning is just a very simple, of course, with edit across glyphs. If it's on, you can do it across many glyphs in the glyph window. And yep, that works across masters. Now, TypeRig also includes Delta machine, which is a implementation of the papers that Tim Ahrens has published on anisotropic interpolation. I'm not, well, I hope I'm saying it right, probably not. But with Delta Machine, you can kind of use it to create things like small caps very, very easily. This is, again, a font with more than 30 masters, I think. And it's possible to use the user interface, but it's also possible to set up some JSON files where you have the parameters, the scaling, and the interpolation for every master. And, well, you can, there's going to be some more info about how it works, but you can Google for Delta Machine or TypeRig. Very easy, very simple. Of course, you can also rerun these transformations multiple times and update things like small caps or other transformed.
And that's all for today. Thank you and see you soon.